Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and another STAMPtember exclusive collaboration video. For those not aware, whole bunch of brands collaborate with Simon Says Stamp to sponsor STAMPtember. These sets are designed by the brands and exclusive to Simon Says Stamp while supplies last during the month of STAMPtember. So if and when they sell out, they're one and done, they're not restocked. However, all of the brands have tons and tons and tons of fabulous products to choose from, and I always link to the brand along with the collabs that I used in the description box below the video, as well as on my blog, etc. And today's collab is with Pinkfresh, and it's gorgeous, and I had fun with it. I pulled out some shimmer powders. I haven't done that in a while, and yeah, shimmery goodness. But yeah, Pinkfresh has tons of just so many good stamps and dies and stencils and accessories and all the things, so many things. So keep watching and I will show you guys how I made these cards. So I took pieces of Canson XL watercolor paper and I'm going to use my MISTI here, and the main image of this artistic foliage stamp set that is the Pinkfresh Studio collab set, and wiped off my grip mat in my MISTI there because I've got tons of anti-static powder on it, that sort of a thing. So I just wipe it off every once in a while so that it can still grip my papers. And then I used the anti-static powder on the watercolor panels, and I arranged the stamp to stamp kind of in the corner. And I inked it up with clear embossing ink, and I'm going to ink this up and stamp it twice because I want to get all the detail, because there's a lot of detail in this little stamp. And then I am using Ranger's Liquid Platinum embossing powder. This is another one of my favorites that I haven't used in a while, and it's fabulous. Just fabulous. So I flipped the panel around and then stamped it again and stamped it twice again to get all that detail. Covered it with that same liquid platinum embossing powder, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. And if you've never used Ranger's Liquid Platinum embossing powder, highly recommend it. It's like a warm silver, because it's not silver embossing powder. It's got a different tone to it, and hence why I have it in one of my bigger Systema containers, because it is a favorite of mine, and I had multiple containers of that embossing powder. So I then pulled out the old letter? Is that what it's called? Yeah, the old letter background stamp from Simon. And I just put it face up on my desk, and I inked it up with Simon's Fossil ink. This is their original ink formula that is not water reactive. And Fossil is one of my favorite colors. I'm a little bit concerned. I think they're going to retire this one. I really don't want them to. People were telling me, I talked about this in a recent video because I used it again, and I was like, I love this ink pad. And they're like, get refills. There are no refills for these inks. There never were. These ink pads last for literal ever. I've had mine for years and they're going strong. So I will use it until it is dried up. I don't care. It's one of my faves. Anyway, I stamp it onto these backgrounds, and because it's not water reactive, it's not going to smear or anything. And it's just going to give a really neat look to these backgrounds. And then I tape them to a hardboard. I didn't need to tape all sides. This is just to hold them somewhat flat because the amount of water I'm going to spray on these, I've shown in other videos that it'll just curl right up, which is fine, but it makes everything kind of run off the sides. And I have a playlist of videos I've done using shimmer powders, because I've used these Lindy's ones many times, and I've also done ones with the Nouveau shimmer powders. I have a bunch of videos in that playlist, so I will have a link to that at the end of this video if you want to check it out, because I do love me some shimmer powders. So I'm using is it the Industrial Chic? Yes, the Industrial Chic set. I used 4 of the colors because they come in sets of 5. So I used 4 of the colors of the set, and I just pick up some of the powders with one of my little fan brushes. This one specifically is a picket fence one, which I don't have a link to, but any fan brush will work. This one's just my favorite. There's something about the bristles on it that picks up shimmer powders really nicely. So I use it just for that. So, looks like nothing. And then you spray it and it looks like a hot mess. I know. You gotta bear with me. It's going to look like a hot mess. You got to leave it and let it dry. So I spray this heavily with water. And then the only like mucking around I do is I'm just taking a tissue and kind of sopping up. Like I've got puddles of water everywhere. So I'm just kind of sopping that up and just sopping up like the excess puddles all over this, only because I don't have time. Normally I will set these aside and just let them take their time to dry. It is amazing the difference, but I didn't have enough time because I'm scrambling, because it's this month and all the chaos that, the delayed package and all the things. Anyway, so I didn't have a ton of time. So I sopped up the excess and then I actually used my heat tool to speed up the drying process, and night and day difference. Night and day difference. So always either just set it aside, let it dry. You just let them do their thing, or you can speed along the process with a heat tool. So once these are dry, they look completely different. I was originally going to also paint over them, like paint the actual leaf areas, but decided to just leave it, just let it, the whole thing just did its thing. So then for my main sentiment, I pulled out Simon's Fancy Hello wafer die, and I die cut it from scraps of white cardstock. And I used one of the scraps and I just put some dot runner adhesive on it to adhere one of the die cuts. And I did this twice because I'm doing 2 cards. And that I'm just using the scrap as a handle. So after pressing the die cut into the dot runner adhesive, I then used one of my paper pouncers that I have dedicated to just clear embossing ink or Versamark, and pounce that all over. You can also just press your ink pad into this. I just like using the pouncer because it's more convenient and it keeps me from getting embossing ink on my hands, because that's one of the things that actually does bother me. I don't like the feeling of it. It's like sticky and it bugs me. So coated it, poured over that liquid platinum embossing powder, melted it, and then I repeated the process so I could get 2 coats of this embossing powder on these die cuts to give them a little bit more of a smoother, a little more raised look. And I'm doing this because I don't have any specialty papers or metallic papers that will coordinate with liquid platinum embossing powder. Like I said, silver would kind of work in a pinch, but they're just different tones. And I was being picky. So I've shown this in many videos. I just heat embossed over top of these die cuts. And if you do multiple layers, you can actually make your die cuts look like faux metal. But I just find when I just want like sentiment, like tinted, 1 coat is decent. 2 coats gives a much smoother finish. And then I popped them off those scrap little handles I had made. And then I heated them a final time, just a little bit, just to remove any little bits that might have been stuck on the edges from being stuck to that scrap. That's why that was for that. Or that was what that was for. Hui. Anywho, after I did that, I had die cut more of these sentiments, of course, from more scraps of cardstock, and then I'm stacking them together because that's the rule. Dimension is life. And it just makes everything look better. So I stacked them together with craft tacky glue and then topped them with the die cuts that I had added the liquid platinum embossing powder to, and repeated the process for the second card front here. And I've sped up everything in editing. Let's just get to the point. You guys don't need to watch everything in real time. So did that with the second die cut. So 2 layers of die cuts for the dimension, topped with the heat embossed sentiment. And then the other thing I did off camera is I die cut some vellum using one of my favorites, the Windswept leaves wafer die set, because I've shown this in like a bajillion videos. So I die cut it from vellum, and on camera it looks much more subtle. In real life you can see it, but the whole point is it to be a bit subtle. And I just laid the die cut on the background, put adhesive on the back of the Fancy Hello die cut. That's what's going to hold the vellum leaves in place. And then I just put my big ol' Hero Arts blocks on top of that to hold everything down while this glue dries. Because you don't really want to add adhesive to vellum because it shows through the vellum. Even things that claim to be for vellum, I call kind of BS on that. Because it shows. The only way I've gotten around that is running vellum through like a Xyron machine and applying adhesive across the entire back of it. However, that also makes vellum a little more transparent. So basically you just get creative with hiding where you've adhered things, or you wrap the vellum, or do things like I showed just 2 seconds ago. So I then pulled out a scrap of cardstock. I don't even know what color this is. I think it's a Concord 9th. Like, it looks very close to lemongrass. But it was in my scrap drawer, and it just kind of went with the green color of the shimmer powders that were created. So I heat embossed one of the little sentiments from the stamp set. And then I trim those down with my paper trimmer. And then my card bases are going to be top folding A2 white note cards. And I lined those up in my MISTI. I cleaned off the stamp, lined that up, and I'm going to stamp that with the fossil ink that I used for that script background on the card fronts. So stamp that onto the inside of both of these cards. And then after I stamp that, I'm going to take another sentiment from the set. I'm going to line that up, and then I'm going to ink that up and stamp that with Simon's Ocean ink, because the aqua color just kind of, again, pulled in from the shimmer powders on the front of the card. So I lined that up, stamped that with the ocean ink, and then did the same thing with the other card base. So got that stamped. And then the card fronts I had die cut with one of the Waffle Flower A2 wafer dies so that it's slightly smaller than my card fronts, or my card bases. And then, of course, I put Big Mama foam tape on the back of these so that there's a little bit of dimension, but not a ton. And I also put Big Mama foam tape on the back of those sentiments that I heat embossed and just popped those underneath the die cut sentiments. And then, of course, I had matching bling. I didn't think that this would be such a good match, but these are the champagne glitter drops from Pinkfresh Studio. They look much warmer online in real life. Dude, they're like a really good match to Ranger's liquid platinum embossing powder. So yeah, that made me really happy. I love when I find things that are like matchy. It's not like the biggest, most important thing in the world to me, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I love when it just happens. So stuck those on, turned the flashlight on my phone so you guys can see the shimmer and the sparkle because it's amazing. And like I said in the intro, I will have links below the video to my blog post, links to all the supplies I used, etc. All that will be in the description box below for anyone who is interested. So you just got to expand the description box and all of that will be there. And then, as always, thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I would love to have you. We're slowly closing in on 100,000 subscribers, which is just bizarre to me. And I very much appreciate you guys. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.